that there are no data generated in RTG. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So yeah, maybe it's not that important. So should we then make a presentation first of all, or? Okay, let's then make it. So first of all, let's overview the agenda for today. The first is registration almost done. So then I will try to overview the workflows in terms of how you should create different types of objects and interlink them together. We will consider some maybe specific types like idea or experiment plan or request for synthesis. And then we also take a look at the report which is generated in idea or experiment plan object. And what is the most important maybe for today is we will learn how to interlink objects properly, because in principle, there should be no disconnected objects in the database. This is essential stuff. And we will maybe finish with handovers. So regarding the user registration, once again, I will repeat that please register if you have not done this so far using our production environment, CRC 1625, MDI rule Unibochum DE, and then please fill in the form. After that, Sabrina or me or Alfred, we can just assign you privileges to add the data to the system. So in principle, our research workflow in terms of data management should look like this. First of all, one should create an idea or plan object, which could be considered as a kind of container for samples which should be manufactured afterwards. In principle, sometimes we don't know exactly what needs to be done, and that's when we can ask for some help from our computational partners, and then can help us formulate some specific request for synthesis in terms of, I don't know, pinpointing some promising compositions that we need to manufacture as a sample. And then in principle, all these objects in database should be interlinked to each other, and sample should be considered as a child object, either for idea or plan or for request for synthesis. Then, of course, when we proceed with the characterization step, we should associate all our characterizations with this respected sample. And even if we perform some treatment, such as annealing, polishing, whatsoever, then in principle, the properties of our materials library change, and it means that next characterization which is done should be associated with the second state of a sample. That will enable us to track the current state of a sample, exactly when and where have we done certain experiment, at what state of the sample. And in ideal situation, of course, we should end up with report, which is once again just an object type in a database, which enables you to associate with this object report in some arbitrary format. So you can use either Microsoft Word, you can upload your presentation, which somehow summarizes your experiment. And then, of course, this report object should be once again interconnected with next ideas or plans for the experiments. So this is the typical workflow which should be established within a system and which we should follow actually. And one more remark is considered regarding the idea or plan object. So within this idea or plan object, if we know in advance the characterization techniques which we should use in order to provide sufficient measurement or whatsoever, then in principle, defining those techniques enable you to automatically generate a report for this idea or plan, in which you've got actually a table or matrix, and then every row of this table is a sample, and every column is a specific measurement technique, and then system shows you what exactly was already measured or what is still needs to be measured. So everything is trackable, of course, within research data management system. Okay, first of all, let's proceed with the top level entity, so to say, which is idea or experiment plan. In principle, motivation here is to create a kind of object which somehow generalizes batch of a sample of samples. And then in principle, you can specify here under measurement reports what exactly needs to be measured regarding this idea or experiment plan. So what kind of measurements do you want to have ultimately? And in principle, if you need, for example, EDX, XPS, SCCM, and so on, you just place one here. Otherwise, you could leave this field empty. And that's how actually you establish the desired measurements, so to say. And then directly in this idea or experiment plan object, you can find two more buttons, which are associated with the creation of additional objects, such as sample or request for synthesis. So these buttons are specially designed in order to provide a link between experiment plan and corresponding request for synthesis or for corresponding sample, so that sample is created initially interlinked with this parent idea or experiment plan object,
Victor,
which is
maybe you can show this directly at the web page.
yeah,
You can
sure,
switch
sure,
to the web page, and you can, and
sure.
people who wants to create an idea can maybe follow and try.
Yep, yep, that's true. For this reason, I would like, in principle, if you would like to have a kind of free playground, then I would suggest you this website, which is inf.mdi.bochum.de. So this is a playground which is available for everybody. You could use credentials which are specified here at the main page of the application. I just suggest you use admin1 at user.org. This is an email and a password. In principle, this provides you with the highest permissions possible, and then you can start adding objects. For example, I could go here to this project tree and, for example, add some project. Here I should specify kind of a name. Let it be test. And then, so can it insert? Okay, so probably test was already created, which is a kind of, yeah. Okay, then let it be something like test something. Then in this container, in this project, I could add idea or plan. So here I would like to specify the name of my experiment plan. I don't know, for example, this could be discovery of some promising electrocatalyst for some type of reaction, but some demo plan. Description field is optional, but I would recommend you to fill this out with some content. And then we've got a list of measurement techniques, which actually can be extended. So the only thing we need to do is to add corresponding property to the template. So here I can directly specify that, for example, for all samples which are connected with this idea or experiment plan, one should measure EDX, XRD, for example, and SCCM. So then I just save this idea or plan, and here it's displayed within this test project. And if I go inside of this idea or plan, then I immediately see two buttons, add request for synthesis and add a sample, which means I can start with adding a sample. So for example, if I click on this button, then I need obviously to select some substrate. So somebody played here with a substrate. So this is also extendable list. So I can select some substrate, should specify the sample type, wafer identifier, which is our intrinsic ID. So mandatory fields are name, which is in most of the cases could be used to specify, for example, some chemical system. something like this. Or you could provide some also description here in this field. So chemical system is also mandatory field, so you can select some elements or just paste them if they are already predefined in your case. So by default, of course, you should aware of accessibility of the corresponding sample. So because currently I am not in the production environment, this is a test environment. This is a public access level, which means that this entity is available for everybody. In production environment, protected is selected by default. So this just depends on the environment which you are using. So, okay, if I press save button here, then as you can see, I've got sample created, and this sample is already linked as an associated object within my experiment plan. In future, in principle, to add more samples, you can either use this green button to add more samples, or if samples are already in the database and you want to interlink already existing samples, then you should use this blue button. So here, for example, if I press on this, I will use this form, which shows me that currently with my idea or plan, we've got only one object associated. In principle, here there is a small search form you can use in order to find some samples, objects, whatsoever, what you want to associate with this idea or plan. And then once you see some entities in the list, you can just simply drag and drop them over here. This could be samples, or you can, I don't know, filter, for example, for some specific data type if you want, if you've got too long list or in some other case. But anyway, in my case, we need samples, for example, then you just drag and drop them and press save button. So once they became green, it means that they were saved in the database. And in principle, if you just go back to the idea or plan, you can see that, okay, we've got those samples interconnected with our idea or plan. So actually, this enables us to build a graph behind the scenes, which means that all objects should be interlinked to each other, and you should, of course, aware of the connections, because it should be a connection from experiment plan to sample and not in the reverse direction. And this is something one should, of course, keep in mind. But this is a kind of natural, and this is explained here at this very slide.
Maybe Alan
Yep.
has a question.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, audio, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. If I may interrupt briefly. So I am actually following along with the thing open with the database open on my desktop. So going back to creating new object ideas or experiment plans. There's a list of measurement reports.
Mhm.
I think you said that this list could be extended. So when I look at it, what I want to do is I would want some SEM images associated with the idea I'm thinking of, but it's not on this list.
So let's then just introduce this. Actually, in this playground tenant, we've got some other template, but nevertheless, so in principle, one could go to the template object, and here, when we've got public ideas or experiment plans, we can click on the edit button, and actually here you would find a list of possible measurement techniques.
Right, but
And
it isn't.
actually,
Okay.
yeah, of course. But in principle, you can add a new object. So, which means you just add a new property. For example, if I want to place something between SDC and SCCM, it should be sort code 550. And then let me just add your, what should it be? APT or?
No, no, scanning electron microscope image. So this would go, I don't know, where, let's say it would go after thickness, maybe.
Okay, after thickness.
Yeah,
Okay.
for instance.
Then let's make it like this, fake value -1, and then 380. Command actually should contain the list of identifiers which could be considered as appropriate measurement types in this case.
Actually, that
So
was my next question. What do all these numbers mean?
yeah. But it's fine. Yeah. So in principle, in this situation, I would like to open the next tab in order to go to the list editor. So here I could see all the types, and then in principle, I should find the corresponding object, which is SEM. Yeah, SEM image here. So this means that type ID equals to 24, right? And then directly I could place it here. So of course I can place some blah 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 words, but in principle the description should be written here, and then after some delimiter, this is considered to be a list. So here actually, if I made a let's just make it nice. Then I would like to maybe edit this once again. Report, yeah, something like this. And then immediately this should be visible in our idea or experiment plan. So let's take a look. So if I just go here and click edit by template, I will see same image here, which means I can place one here, save the changes, and then I've got this column in my report, which means if you associate some images with one of the samples, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So it depends on the image count.
Mhm. That's what I want.
Yeah, that's great.
So if other people have questions, raise a hand and we would try to answer the question. Otherwise, Victor, you maybe can go on, maybe some other questions related to other things.
Yeah, probably.
Thank you.
Okay, I have no idea whether I have to go on with the presentation or demonstration. Yeah, let's try something like this. Um, yeah, another type of the object one can create is a request for synthesis. In most of the cases, this is something which is asked by external consortium members, maybe. So anyway, at this case or at this stage, one should specify a name for this object, but what is the most important is to specify chemical system and of course the composition, because this is a kind of technical task the manufacturing team needs to do, because they need to sputter materials library, which contained somewhere this composition specified. And of course, sub-projects which are responsible for these synthesis processes, they use special reports which are available under reports button, which are request for synthesis, which is once again available here. So for example, if I go to our tenant, our production tenant, I mean, and here I could see request for synthesis report, which looks like this actually. So here you could see that red is a kind of request which is not yet fulfilled. It means that no sample is associated with this request. Once at least one sample is associated as a child, then this request becomes green. That's how we can, I don't know, track at least those requests. The next idea would be to send notifications to the Slack, to the emails, to the people who are responsible for synthesis. Um,
Can you maybe create a request?
uh, yeah, sure, but okay, yeah. It's fine. Let's create something. For
But
example,
maybe can we try to make something real? So I mean, many people are now in the group, and maybe there's someone actually has something
yeah,
for sample, and then we can actually do it in the real thing. And Sabrina, you are very hard to hear. You should move your microphone probably, but it's very,
Oh,
uh,
Maybe
yeah,
now better.
yeah.
then
Okay.
great. If somebody has some idea, then let's just share screen and try to create this object. And we will try to guide you through.
Yeah, just
And
right
while you
here.
think about it, I have maybe another thing is, I mean, we should redefine some of these workflows or experimental plans. So what you showed now, you can set it together yourself. This should be possible, but we should also have some predefined best practice workflows. So I think we will come up with this next, and then we can agree upon this uh, predefined workflows and try to follow them.
Yeah, sure. Does anybody have any ideas or plans to create in the production tenant?
Uh, so I have a plan or an idea I would create. But okay, as far as this a sample request, I wouldn't do that yet. And actually, that's a question because if I make an idea, presumably at least in my particular case, I would be making a sample request to myself. Does, does this make does should this be done just out of procedural thoroughness, or is this just total as somewhat redundant?
You don't need a request for synthesis for yourself. You just associate the sample. You can push on the button sample and then create it and link it to the idea. So it's request for synthesis is if you go across, let's say, from theory to experiment, or some characterization guys need a special sample for whatever field, ion microscopy, STM, or electrochemistry. Then I mean, should not do unnecessary work. Right? I mean, if nobody needs a sample, we're already done with the whole project. Huh? So I don't know if this is good, but good. Don't be shy. Or we can do something else, right? I mean,
Yeah, sure. Then maybe let's play with the demo tenant or
maybe it would be good if we could record this, how to do a request.
okay, then let's make it. So then I would share my screen then probably, yeah. Once again. Should I make this request in our production environment or where
Yeah,
should it be?
maybe.
Okay, good, good,
Can
good.
you see me better now, actually?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, to be honest. So in principle, it depends on the subproject where the request should be located. So let's imagine, I don't know, for some subproject, for example, B02, we need to have a request for synthesis. So as far as you can see, in this project, we have no data objects at all, and we can have just an idea or plan object here, or if we need something else to add, then we can utilize this green button, which is general add. So if I click on this, then I will have a long list of different types of objects I could create. In principle, I prefer here to search for some keyword. For example, in my case, this would be request for synthesis, which is here. If I click on this object, actually here I should provide some meaningful description. Uh, I don't know, what should I ask, Sabrina? My fantasy is extremely limited. What kind of elements should I
Yeah, maybe
for?
some gold, silver, palladium, platinum, ruthenium.
Good. And then actually I need also specify a composition. Should it be equiatomic or?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's make something like this. Uh, okay, equiatomic, something like this. If you need some specific or something doesn't fit to this form, of course, you should specify this in description and then press the save button. So here we've got this request for synthesis, which means actually that our report should be updated and our new request for synthesis is available here, which means that sputtering subgroups should take care of this.
So speaking as a sputterer, I would say that the description automatically should say some sort of tolerance. I mean, if you say equiatomic, to me, this means 2020, 20, 2020. But if you ask Alfred, he will say it does not need to be that. Um, but so actually, there are two types of requests that I've seen, generally speaking. One is where we're supposed to repeat something that's already been done, and so it should be very close to what was previously done. And the other is we need a material with these 5 elements, and whether it's plus minus 5%, who cares? So there should be some communication about how important, or, what this percentage really means, exact or not.
You're absolutely right. So you could specify this at least in a description and then probably use Slack to, I don't know, ask or negotiate all the obstacles, right?
But why not include this allowed allowed discrepancy or something? Because this is really an important point.
Yeah, or just say exact or not. I mean, so
Yeah, but to which level exact? I would
yeah,
say tolerance allowed in atomic consent, right? And then we
yeah.
know it's plus minus 5, plus minus 0, or something like this. So I think that's a very good point, because then we don't need to discuss this. It's just then it's
In database,
yeah.
yeah. That's actually great
I think
suggestion then, and we can adjust a template for this type right now in order to include this property in the description.
just a remark, if you can hear me.
Yep.
I think the way we did it with Rico previously, when I asked it for a synthesis, this composition means the center of the wafer. And then, of course, you will have a gradient. So it's around this composition. Rico, right? Yeah. So this is like the center composition of the wafer.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do we have, if it's a library or if it's a homogeneous sample,
Yeah.
at that point we should also be able to choose this in the request for synthesis. I mean, that's how it should be in the workshop. We develop together how it needs to be done, because this can only be done together, right? So I think we need to differentiate between a homogeneous samples, which could be requested, or a library. And then, as Rita rightfully says, it's a different thing, right? So, but still, you can
But
say
even
it's
a
equiatomic in the
library,
middle. How much is it allowed to deviate in the middle? So
even a library needs a tolerance. I mean, so it's the center. I want to. It's true. It's the center of the library, but that also needs to know whether this should be close to that composition, or if it's just anything with those
yeah, tolerance applies to both, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know if it was yet there that we can say, okay, I request a library, or I request a sample, a homogeneous one. And I mean, to make it more complicated, you could also request, let's say, a whole quinary system, and then it's up to the experimental guys how to cover this also. Or you could also make a request for the calculation for the Copenhagen guys and say, okay, please calculate this quinary systems, and then you would need to specify also in which steps and stuff like this. So there could be some level of refinement, but I think first we have to get the big parts right, and then we can refine. So I think it's good.
Yeah, so currently I have defined the tolerance as a property here. which actually means that in principle it could be specified for request for synthesis only if I request for synthesis only if I guess make some more changes. So here we've got this, and then actually, so what I need to use is that I need to use a special keyword here, I guess. So, where could it be? Just wait a minute. Yeah, it's here. So, yeah, it's adjustable, which is great. Yeah, save this. Good. And this actually means that from now on, if you issue request for synthesis object, it will always contain this tolerance property. And you are unable to submit this to make changes without specifying some value here. So, I mean, if tolerance should be 1%, then just place 1 here, or 0.5 and just press save button. And then in principle, you can also search for this request for synthesis with respect to a certain tolerance, so to say. Yeah.
Okay, maybe some questions. If not, we have on the list also connect sample object with idea object, but this is what we actually did already, and the handover event.
Okay, regarding handover, in principle, yeah, handover is a dedicated object which is intended to be used when you physically want to transfer sample to other subgroup for some reason, right? Then in principle, the workflow should be the following. First of all, it's intended to be used only for physical objects. But of course, this is configurable, so we can provide handover of ideas, of, I don't know, something else, non-physical if you want. So there is some noise on the background. Somebody. Oh, yeah, now it's better. Then actually to initialize the handover, we need to press on this green track button. After that, we need to fill in the form. First of all, we need to specify the recipient for this handover from the list of users available in this tenant. Then, I mean, in our case, since we are transferring materials library, so we should not specify any amount, but in case if your sample is just a powder, then you can specify, I don't know, some milligrams or whatsoever. Command and click on this blue button, which means that handover object will be created in a database, and then the recipient will be notified via email, and the current status will be like this. So this handover event will be highlighted with the yellow color, which means it's not yet confirmed. So once recipient got the sample, so he or she can put some command for the sender and press this blue confirm handover button, which means at this stage handover is confirmed, and the sender of course receives also an email notification. So this is the typical overview of handover. So as you know, at the very top of the page, we've got handover menu. If you click on this, then you've got a list of current samples, which means that you have confirmed the samples. They are somehow connected with you. So, and currently you hold them. And you've got also list of incoming and outgoing handovers. This is, so to say, previous events. With this, in principle, yeah, it's also explained once again here. And we have also a kind of handover overview in terms of every sub-project. So if you go to some certain area and sub-project, then you obviously see all the handovers associated with all persons who somehow connected with this project. So this is a project-wide overview. This is in principle, I guess, all that you should know with respect to handover. And the practical part could be to hand over a real sample, I guess, in our database. If you have some suggestions what we should hand over, what sample ID, then just let me know, we can make it. Do we have some ideas? Not yet. Then in principle, I could, I don't know, search for something. In principle, if I search for samples, then I would conclude with a list of 612 samples, which are in the database so far. And then the recent sample was from C04. In principle, yeah, I can just I'm not allowed to be honest, but we could hand over this sample on behalf of Peter to somebody else, if you like, and then I can delete this test case. So if we have some sample, then we can click on the handover button, which means I have to select the recipient. And here you can see that actually it's highly beneficial to specify the name and the project. Otherwise, you just see those emails and you don't really know who is this, right? And then you see some person, for example, Lars, and I would like to hand over the sample to him, let's say. And here I could ask him to make some measurement whatsoever. But nevertheless, I will just click on the handover button, and then actually this handover is created. So it's yellow because it's pending. And in principle, if Lars authorizes in this system and confirms this handover, then we will have it in a green state. So actually, for every sample, we could have multiple handovers, which means this list could be quite long. And the last entry in this list would mean that the last person really has the sample. So this is the logic behind of this. And of course, all the handovers and the samples, they are interconnected with these links. So one could build, for example, graph which represents how with the help of handovers, the sample travels between different groups and people in order to, I don't know, make some measurements, make some progress, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, maybe just one remark. In the retreat, we discussed that also the PI will get the email. So if a handover will take place between two PhDs, then also the PI should take also a notification or get a notification of this handover event. And Victor and I, we also try to do this via Slack, not only via email. So additionally on Slack, that also maybe the whole project can get a notification.
Yeah, good suggestion. In principle, yeah, it's quite easily doable, which means, yeah, we can make it. But if only PIs need to be notified, then in principle, we should also provide some claim, right, to distinguish between people, because several different persons could be associated with a single project, and then I should know who is the PI actually. Yeah, but this is manageable.
Do someone has a question or suggestion to that? if not, of course, you can always ask Victor, also me, about things. This video will be in Moodle, so you can always go back and take a look. Yeah, Wolfgang has a question, I see.
Yeah, I tried to switch off my camera to look more polite, to on. So with this, it's the wrong one. Yeah, no. Side view, yeah, it's terrible. Okay, and with this notification, so I think when everyone is notified and one at a certain time, one has 67 Slack messages per day which are not related to someone, then no one is reading them anymore. So the big question is how to make it specific enough that it's somehow also, it's like a long email. No one is reading long emails. One is starting and then one is giving up. Yeah. So when the number of messages, so I think a feedback is very, very important, but it should reach the people who are really interested in this specific action. And I guess one could probably define a sort of a group of sub-projects of the CRC. Let's say one has a sort of, initially A1 is doing something for C1, and at a later stage we need something from B, whatever. And then it's first a more restricted group, and then later on the results can be, of course, accessible and open for everyone, but not everyone wants to be permanently, let's say, informed about the progress of a sample transfer between A01 and C01 or so on. So I don't know exactly how one can specify, but probably one could make a sort of.
But Wolfgang, that's not like you describe it. It's you're only notified if it's for your project, and then some PIs wanted to have this because if there's not yet a postdoc or doctoral student involved, then the PI is responsible. And so we could say for which project the PI needs to be informed, because some of them want to be informed. So then we can make a request and say everybody should state who should be informed for the actual sample transfer. And up to now, I mean, there were maybe 5 transfers. So this was not something like you would be overwhelmed, because to be honest, not so much is happening how it should happen.
I was just thinking about what Sabrina was saying concerning this Slack information that everyone would have access. So I was asking myself if this is, I think feedback also in general, yeah, when Monshu is requesting something and something is coming back and I would be informed with a Slack message, I would love to have this feedback, because then without too much effort, I would be informed, yeah.
Yeah, but it's also very easy because we have these action teams, and in these action teams there you can put it, because this is something where you should be interested in. Otherwise, you should not be in the action team. And this is where not everything too allgemein to everyone. I mean, that's probably what you're saying. Not everybody should be informed about everything, but only specific things. And these are these action teams, which we should also.
One could reformulate what Sabrina said, not everyone, but everyone in action team is informed about something which is happening in this action team. Then this was my concern, yeah. Okay.
For clarification. And I wanted to also make a suggestion, because I hope, to be honest, that there's a little bit more interest also today if we say there's a database workshop. And I mean, for example, for me, it would be very clear each characterization project should have at least a general request for synthesis. What kind of samples do they need? You could like write a request for synthesis which specifies what kind of samples you need in general just to test it. Or I mean, we need to make this system work, and then there's a lot of things which could be put in, or these ideas and plans. And for example, if you don't know what the ideas are, also for the co-workers, there's this big book which was written with goals and aims and work packages and so on. So then this can be translated in these ideas and project plans. So and we want to have this in digital form to be able to make new things with it. Also, for example, a knowledge graph and so on. But this only works if now people get active and not super passive, saying nothing in meetings. This is not really like I imagine a vital scientific cooperation. So maybe everybody should give themselves a little push and get things now going. So please do it. And yeah, as I said, everyone could put in something now. And I already sent around an email with like it's a very, let's say, very not so nice usage of the system. And as you see, if there's something coming up, we can immediately, or Victor can immediately change it. So if we want to make a difference, everyone now is asked to really participate. So please do it. So still no answer. Okay.
The one suggestion is, I think the problem is more the transition from the, let's say, previous workflow where some people were somehow discussing something and then the synthesis was happening and so on. So probably one could, I don't know if this was done, that one is for the beginning more artificially because it was already somehow decided that things which are already ongoing, one is trying to put in this workflow later on. Yeah. So my feeling is we have enough materials libraries, but there was not a request for synthesis because it was discussed anyway, and we know it's coming. So there is no request for synthesis. When in the old not database using system, this was anyway functioning. So probably one could take this up and later on put it in the system that one has more examples which are. So Victor is at least making like this, because I have the feeling many things are functioning, but they are not translated in the new database structure. And this like I go from cash money to using always a card, then I'm insecure and have always cash money with me. Yeah, and so the transition is probably the problem, not the willingness of the people. And when then things are done, you have no request, yeah, because you did it in the old way or so on. So probably one could include things, yeah, which were already done in the later on, even when
Yeah,
there's.
sure. It can be included. Nothing speaks against this, but also new things should happen, right? We are, because I think we are not yet done with the project. So, but according to the database, it looks better. Alan.
Is there a way to transfer over all the preliminary stuff?
It's already there. So what we did, what is in the MDI database, it is already there.
It already is there. Okay.
And I took yesterday or the other day, I was looking through the database and we cleaned some stuff which doesn't belong there. So, yeah, so now it should be only the relevant preliminary work is in there. Of course, with no like ideas connected or so, because we did not have these objects in the database then, but I think we can now do this. And yeah. So there's data in the database, but I mean, for the CRC, everybody, all projects have to be involved. And yeah, this is not yet the case. And I think it's a great opportunity to use this, but at some point we need to start, and not 3 days before the reviewers come and will ask us, what did you do with this? So also then if people go, then all this, I will do it later, this doesn't work. And I mean, I will monitor this and discuss with PIs and co-workers, because we really have to do this. And I think you're all like bright guys and see the advantages. So there should not be a need to talk about this, because I mean, it's obvious that we have to have the data in the right format to do then fancy machine learning and other things, which probably many of you are hopefully interested. And it's not so hard to put the data in. But now is the time to really start this. So again, yeah, please do so.
So we're planning to do, are you hearing me? Better?
Yes.
Okay, we're planning to do also another workshop again, but just like a quick check if there are questions or problems. So you have time to figure out how to do this. Please check this video then. And also always ask Victor or me, or write also in the RDMS channel if you have questions. Maybe someone else has also the same question. Yeah, so if there are no questions, I would say the part of the workshop can be closed, and maybe if there are other discussions left. Otherwise, yeah, I see just the time. It's already 4.
We can stop. Nobody says anything. It means we are at the end for today.